All right, welcome back. I'm joined now by Jeff Lloyd. Jeff writes for me at Inside the Pylon. I kind of messed his song up. I'm sorry about that, Jeff. But I had to hook you up with some Bruce because I know that you love the Springsteen.
Oh, absolutely. Any Jersey boy. I live in the town where, he was born and raised. So, it's
Yeah.
just, for me, it's a thing. And if you're a Jersey guy, it's either Bon Jovi or Bruce. And, I wasn't always so much into the hair music so much as it is. But, Bruce
Right.
Leifer, actually just went and saw him again last Tuesday night, 4 hours and 1 minute. My wife, who's not a huge fan, she even walked out of there, though, and she was like, man, that was damn good.
I love Bruce Springsteen. I have not seen him in concert yet. That is definitely a bucket list thing. I'm disappointed in myself for not ever seeing him before, but I have seen Bon Jovi, and they are fantastic in concert. And that's been a few years ago. That was right before they kicked Richie Sambora out again. So
Again.
Again, yeah, right. So I got to see the original group, and that was great. And by the way, you totally have the accent. So this is our first chance to meet each other live, and hear each other talk. And so you've totally got the Jersey boy accent, and I love that.
42 years here, born and raised. For years, told myself, I'll be out of here. And here it is from 1974 to 2016, and raising two little Jersey girls myself here now. So
Well, there you go. See, I was, it was really hard. And I liked the song that I chose for you, but apparently the version that we did where we, faded it out and edited it correctly didn't get uploaded, or maybe it did. Blog Talk Radio sometimes likes to mess around with your uploads. Maybe that happened. But, I had a hard time deciding what song to pick. There's so many great ones. Bruce has such a great catalog, and with such a prolific career, it was really hard to pick a song. I wanted to go with "I'm on Fire." That may be your outro song for this segment. But as you listened, as you heard, I am still mad about last night. I'm going to get Jeff's thoughts on that, but we're going to start with some Jets talk. But before we get there, I want you to introduce yourself to the audience and tell them a little bit about you. Besides being a Jersey guy, where you ride and where they can find you on social media.
Well, obviously, my name is Jeff Lloyd. I'm here in New Jersey, like I said, for a long time. Football has always been my life. I'm one of 6 kids, but I don't have a sibling. My siblings are either 4 years older than me or 4 years younger than me. So, I did kind of almost lead the existence of an only child just because my older brothers and sisters wanted nothing to do with me, and I wanted nothing to do with my younger brothers and sisters. But sports was always my outlet. It was always football, Giants, Jets. First time I saw Florida State University play a college football game, about 11 or 12 years old. They were just doing things down there that was just so much different from the up north schools here. Like, I was force-fed to Penn State, which was the, run the ball 50 times a game, and it was just boring. And you saw, I got a taste of Florida football and seeing these guys out there, these ridiculous athletes with insane speed. And it was just, and I was lucky enough, my father actually had a grandma who didn't live far from Tallahassee. So whatever games I couldn't get, she was kind enough to record, and she would send them up. So about every Tuesday or Wednesday, I'd have a nice little VCR tape waiting in the mail for me and stuff to watch. So, just became hooked that way. And then as it went on, I've always been more of a college fan over NFL just because, obviously, 160 programs to follow every weekend, the tradition that goes on, it would just always just did more for me. Plus also these kids are playing to make money. What you saw a lot with the NFL ones is you saw the guys had their money and, whatever happened, albeit, they were always good with it. As far as, the writing and stuff like that, I'm a little in between things right now, just trying to finalize some things. Last year was a rough year. My father-in-law was actually very, very ill, so I kind of had to take on some full-time father duties while, my wife actually tended to him and to his ultimate passing in June. So just a tough time. I had to put some stuff on the back burners like you. I was a, blog talk show host, every Monday night, kind of had to put that on the back burner. It just wasn't the most important thing at the time, for what was best for me and, and the ladies in my life. But, so all that stuff's going to start kicking up again on Twitter at Jeff LJ Lloyd. Huge, obviously on there, sitting in office all day long. I'm free to talk about ball all day long, which is, what I love. When I go home, not so much anybody wants to hear about it. So it's kind of like my outlet.
Yeah, I can understand family responsibilities, and I had to take some time off over the spring myself to attend to those things. But um, I agree with you too. College, and we talked about that on the show not too long ago. College football has such a rich tradition, and it really is a great game, and it's fun to watch. And when you contrast what's going on in the NFL, in particular, the game last night, and you and I are going to talk about that later on. In college football, there's a lot to like about the college game, and so I don't know. It's hard. It's definitely a hard question. So the Jets, you follow the Jets, and so you're familiar. And I've been wanting to talk about the Jets because I like them as a team. Ryan Fitzpatrick is a guy who has had some adversity in the league. He was the Titans quarterback for a couple of years, and it's interesting. We'll start with him. The quarterback situation is, and by the way, I love Todd Bowles, and so I'm happy to see him get a head coaching gig. But the quarterback situation is interesting. Can Ryan Fitzpatrick put together 2 good years in a row?
I think what aids Ryan Fitzpatrick is he's in the perfect offense. Obviously, he's been with Chan Gailey before. So it's, each week it's a sitting down of, not so much of Chan Gailey saying, this is what I want to do this week. Whereas, Ryan can sit with him and say, you know what? Yes, I agree with that as well. You know what? Why don't we try this? Because he just knows it so well. I think together they can put together a game plan. They have a wide receiving core that fits Chan Gailey's offense. Yeah. Some guys with some long arms, 6'2", 6'3", even 6'4", big bodies, where the fact that they're going to run some routes, they're going to go over the middle, they're going to take their hits, but these guys are big enough boys that they should be able to hold on to these balls. Ryan Fitzpatrick, obviously not the most gifted quarterback in the world, but he's intelligent, he's great as pre-snap reads, and he's got a quick release, all which aids in the Chan Gailey's offense. And these guys they work together. I mean, obviously they're not going to bust too many big plays. Ryan's arm is not really built for that. Maybe there was 3-4 balls that actually were completed that traveled more than 35 yards in the air last year. Okay. There are some defensive coordinators who do have his number. Obviously, Rex Ryan, coaching up in Buffalo, has always had success, so that makes it a little difficult. Those are always a huge 2 matchups the Jets will have this year, as Rex had his number last year. But I do like the way the team is built for this year. I think just to continuing with what went on last year, Decker, Anunwa, obviously, Brandon Marshall. It's just going to continue as far as these guys all on the same page, and it should lead to pretty good success.
Poor Brandon Marshall. I just have to say, and I'm a big fan, and if you followed the game last night and you know how that game went down, rest in peace his mentions, man, because he was getting all kinds of stuff directed at him instead of the Denver Broncos linebacker, Brandon Marshall. And I bet both of those guys if I were a major athlete, a professional athlete, or an entertainer, I would turn my mentions off. I don't think I would even look at them because, it was horrible. Is this the best, or at least one of the best wide receiver groups that the Jets have had in the past 20 years or so?
I'd say you'd probably put it down as one of the best probably ever, as far as, just from top to bottom. Just ridiculous. Obviously Brandon Marshall, one of the top guys in the game, 100 reception guy. Eric Decker could be a number one in a lot of situations in the NFL. Another guy, should produce anywhere between 80 and 90 receptions. Quincy Enunwa, kind of a little bit of a tweener, but just last year he was a guy who really grew, had to deal with a little bit of a suspension issue. Once that was over and past him, you saw his game rise. Devin Smith, obviously out for first 5 or 6 weeks, a second-round pick. Things have been obviously a little shady for him. He may have not been the best fit for this offense as a pure vertical guy. So, that's a little bit interesting. Undrafted free agent Robbie Anderson out of Temple. Here's a guy that just came into camp every day and continuously beat people deep, continuously caught the ball. I was actually at his pro day. I watched teams, including your Tennessee Titans, work him at cornerback. And I actually scratched my head, and I was like, wow, here's a guy who had a really good year at wide receiver. Now he's getting worked out at cornerback. Jets brought him in, put him at wide receiver. He did nothing but dominate throughout the preseason, earned himself a spot. And then even Jalen Marshall out of Ohio State, a guy that probably shouldn't have left Ohio State when he did. As a redshirt sophomore, only played 2 years, just turned 21 in June, just kind of scratching the surface as a player. Started off really hot, had a couple of miscues and drops during games. Then all of a sudden, as a UDFA, you got voices in the back of your head. If I make mistakes, am I not going to make this team? I think now that he knows he's on this team, does the confidence come back and he just go out there and make plays? Because it's one thing they need in their wide receiving core. It's maybe a little bit of smaller, darting, quicker guy to do some things. And Jalen Marshall should have that opportunity on Sunday. He's going to see some looks in 4 wide receiver sets.
I was going to ask you about him because I am intrigued by him. And I agree. He came out too early. You're seeing that more and more. There was a really good article over at The Ringer by Kevin Clark talking about the age of NFL players and how it's a problem and all of that. He's an intriguing guy. I'm glad to see that he made the roster, and he's a guy that I'm going to be keeping an eye on. Back to the quarterback situation. What does the future look like for Geno Smith, first of all, and then a two-parter here. Which young developmental quarterback would you focus on?
First off, I don't think this, if anything, God forbid, were to happen to Ryan Fitzpatrick, with the schedule the Jets are playing this year, it's just not going to be pretty. Geno Smith with his long wind-up, with Chan Gailey's offense, they don't really seem to be a match. I can understand the fact that he's still here, that you're talking with a guy like Bryce Petty, who came from the system in Baylor, had to learn a lot as far as a pro offense, made really good strides to this point, but obviously now dealing with a shoulder issue that's going to keep him out for a few weeks. But long-term, Geno Smith will not be here beyond this season. There are teams in the NFL that would definitely have interest in him. Everybody always likes to fix a broken quarterback, or, he did have some success. It's just I don't think it's going to be here. Now, as far as the two quarterbacks, the Christian Hackenberg pick, I have no problem with drafting a developmental quarterback that you say we got to rebuild. He needs a lot of work with his footwork. He needs a lot of work with the offense that he ran. My issue is drafting that in the second round. You want to tell me that's a 5th, 6th round pick? By all means, I'm totally great with it. And you want to know what? We have no plans on using the guy this year. That's fine. When I had other issues, the fact that I may be very shaky at right tackle, but I took a 4th quarterback before that, I have some issues there. But, Randy McCagnon has done a great job to this point, so I can't question him here. Because a lot of the moves with the saga with Mo Wilkerson, can he be signed? Can he be signed? How long it took to bring Fitzpatrick back? My mantra was just trust him. He's done the job to this point. Just trust him. So, I will give him a pass here. The fact that Paxton Lynch was taking a couple of picks after the Jets by the defending Super Bowl champions and could be fast tracks to be starting by October, that could be something that comes back to bite him in the ass. But, so you'll go next year. Obviously, it'll be Fitz to start, I would believe. I think right now they believe that they'd be in a spot where either Hackenberg or Petty could be next in line. Both have NFL arm talent, can throw the deep ball, which is something you don't get with Fitzpatrick. They do not have the decision-making yet. Neither one of them has the quick release yet. And just essentially the NFL guts to go out there to this point. Yeah. So it's, it's going to be a road to be traveled. I was a Bryce Petty fan. I seem to end up liking Baylor. I end up liking Baylor players a lot. I just like I understand it doesn't translate right away. But, if you're just going to go out there and run plays and run deep patterns and score points, I think as far as bringing those type of guys into the NFL, I don't see it why it should succeed. These guys have had a ton of offensive success in college, so some of that should translate pretty easily, in my opinion.
I'm a big Bryce Petty fan as well. And, outside of the questions that I had about Christian Hackenberg, it just, it was head-scratching to me in so many ways. And I understand, the situation with Ryan Fitzpatrick and, getting him back in and signed and everything, and that standoff lasted way too long for a lot of reasons. But listen, it's never a good thing when your team is carrying 4 quarterbacks. I'm sorry. It's just not. No. And that's a lot of roster space committed to that position. And I don't even like to see teams carry 3. Although, with the Titans, I certainly understand it a little bit better. But it's interesting. Do you think that Geno Smith still has a future in the league?
I think there's going to be teams who have interest. There's no doubt about it. You look there's guys who've bounced 3, 4, 5 spots and gotten a chance to start with, several NFL teams.
Yeah.
So the fact that, Geno Smith wouldn't get a chance to start somewhere else, I maybe thought, with the Teddy Bridgewater injury, would Minnesota have interest? I mean, obviously they went all in by giving up a number 1 pick and chasing down Sam Bradford, and Philadelphia basically scrapped their entire 2016 season plans because of the allure of a first-round pick for a guy like Bradford. So there's definitely places he can go, and even still there's places where he can go and be a quality backup. I think if he were to somehow maybe find a way in Arizona, he could possibly fit, where they feature a lot of deep passing game. Kansas City with Andy Reid. I mean, there's places he can go and probably perform, and not perform too badly. But I just don't think it's here. And obviously, when they first came in, Geno Smith was on this roster. They went out and they traded for Ryan Fitzpatrick. They went out and they drafted Bryce Petty. Now, this year they went out and drafted Christian Hackenberg. I mean, the writing is on the wall there. Obviously, they didn't think much of him because within 12 months, they went out and acquired 3 more quarterbacks. So, if Geno's here, he's in a tough spot. The best thing to do right now is just be quiet, play the role of the good soldier. And, come January, it's up. Everybody's just going to have a mutual parting of the ways, and hopefully Geno will go on a greener pastures.
Bill Belichick had something interesting to say this past week. I want to ask you about it. He said it's not necessarily the job of the veteran quarterback to mentor the younger guys. And that's striking to me. Of course, it's hard, right, to groom your successor, and that is asking a lot of someone. But, it is important to pay it forward, I suppose. How do you feel about that statement, and how true do you think it is?
The way I kind of took it, though, because, everybody always wants to critique Belichick for anything he said. But anything with Bill Belichick, you kind of have to look at what he said and then almost give it like a Belichick definition. I think what he said basically what he said is I can teach you if you work hard enough to learn. I am not going to teach you to learn how to realize what I'm teaching you. It's not going to work that way. So I think that's part of the issue there. And look, me as an established 10, 11-year NFL quarterback, there's no reason I should have to give up any of my extra time or free time that I have to work with you more. You better do 2 hours extra on your own, so then when we are together, you are picking up what I'm laying down. I think that's kind of what it comes down to. And, obviously there's guys in this league, and we know there's guys who want to do the absolute minimum and hope that they get by. Yeah. And then you look at guys where there's Jameis Winston, who took a lot of critiquing coming into this league. He's the first one in the building in Tampa every day. And why is he the first one in the building? Because he wants to do his work, and he's also good enough that he wants to go out and be in the community, do charitable events. And it's either, you're either going to go that route or you're not. And, some guys, they just want to do what's minimal and think the talent's going to get them by. And regardless of how talented you are at the quarterback position, if you're not doing your extra film study, it's going to be really tough to succeed.
Yeah, it's so funny. I completely agree with what you said. But there are little things that veteran guys can do, like in the quarterback meetings, and including the younger guys, and as you're talking about things and explaining. But it is, I completely agree. Over everything else, it is incumbent on younger guys to put in the time and to pay attention and to listen and to learn on their own. And the situation you just described is Vince Young. And he is a perfect example of a guy who did not succeed because he wasn't willing to put in that time. He thought he could get by on natural talent alone, and, it killed his NFL career.
Absolutely. A phenomenal athlete. And the worst, honestly, thing that probably happened to Vince Young was success coming early. Because he came in with a slow work ethic and not wanting to put in the extra effort, and he obviously had success early and thought, okay, this is all I need to do. Whereas you look at, obviously, not to compare everybody to the Mannings of the world, every offseason, all right, what can I add to what I did last year so I can make sure I'm a little bit better than I was the year before? And, that's how guys like that burn out as quick as they do.
Yeah, and the situation was sort of similar to RG3 and what happened in Washington with the owner kind of coddling the young guy and being a protective barrier. between the young guy and the coaching staff, particularly the head coach, and those things create frictions and what have you. But let's go ahead and move on. The running back situation is interesting to me. I have Matt Forte in a league or two, but Bilal Powell was so cheap, I picked him up. I have him more than I do Forte. What do you expect? How are the carries going to be divvied out there?
I think you're going to see a lot more of Forte probably as a main runner. Bilal Powell's been very effective in his time here with the Jets. But one thing is his injuries have been an issue that he's had to deal with. He's shown very effective as a receiver. One thing that's really interesting about Bilal Powell is every camp, every year, every exhibition season, it almost looks like he is a little bit quicker than he was the year before, which is just rare. I mean, I don't know, exactly what he's doing with his off-season workouts, but he always comes in with a little bit more juice, it seems, than the year before. I think they're in a little bit of a tough spot. I mean, obviously, fantasy-wise, either way, they're good options to have. They're both going to get catches. They're both going to collect yards. But it's really only the two of them right now. Obviously, an undrafted free agent as a third guy. I doubt that's going to stick very long. Jets made a move today, created about $2.5 million more in cap space. I know they've had meetings with Carlos Williams from Buffalo already. I'm not sure maybe if they're poking around that fire. Obviously, he's still got, not available till week 5 with his 4-week suspension. So interesting that they just went ahead today and now have their cap up to almost $6 million. So you have to think the reason they've done that is because they're definitely looking to add a third back or maybe some offensive line help. But definitely, it's not going to be an even split. I'd say maybe more of a 65-35. But with Matt Forte at the age he is, you got to think that there's going to be some weeks where Bilal Powell is feeling it, producing well, and you can save some miles on Matt Forte, just saying, look, this week ain't your week. I think Matt Forte, as the Bears, have gone to a lower rung team, it was, maybe a chance for him to go on, maybe have a little success, towards, maybe the last 1, 2, 3 years of his career here as he phases out. But, I mean, a great player overall. If he can be limited in his touches, obviously the more useful and helpful he can be.
Yeah, I would liken that situation sort of to the situation in Tennessee with DeMarco Murray, who's younger, but still, with DeMarco Murray and Derrick Henry, and how they might – sort of monitor and manage their carries in that situation. And, Bilal Powell's talented. I think Derrick Henry's a little bit more talented, but also he's a young guy and still, kind of feeling his way into the league. And, of course, with pass protection and whatever, you want to ease him in, a little bit. But, I think that it's similar to that in that you'll see whichever guys, kind of the hot hand, which is an overused cliche, but I think it works. Whoever has the hot hand is going to get, the bulk of the work.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Henry, I had concerns with just because you see a guy of that size, and we don't see a lot of that in the NFL and having a lot of NFL success. To this point through his preseason work, I mean, he's kind of shut me up. Hitting the hole 100 miles an hour. Me, the former defensive back I am, you got him one-on-one, I'm telling you right now. I'm faking a cramp. I'm faking a hamstring. I want no part of 250 pounds lowering down on me. None whatsoever. I mean, plus the fact that he is fast enough, he can run past you. So that's amazing. That and Murray, I mean, there's times where, Henry's going to knock your teeth in and Murray's going to run past you. Or Murray's going to run past you, and now guess what? Henry's going to knock you. It's a lovely combo. I think it should help the fact that they don't have a very good wide receiving core down in Tennessee. Should make things easier for the success. Keep things a little more simpler for Marcus because he doesn't have all the talent around him that some quarterbacks are or fortunate enough to have in this league. So, I mean, running the ball, playing some defense, that's obviously going to be the key down in Nashville.
Now I'm going to have to get on you, Jeff. We do not accept any Tabe Sharp slander here on this show. No, I'm just kidding. But I will address that here. I'm talking to Jeff Lloyd, by the way. Thank you for joining me, Jeff. And since you brought it up, and I do want to ask you, I was very, very high on Calvin Pryor coming out. And since you are a former DB, I want to ask you about him. But before we even get there, and since you brought it up, the breathers and whatever, I have to ask you, Tennessee came out, me and my alma mater, the Tennessee Volunteers, came out this week and said that they were going to, Sheets came out and said that he was going to run this evolutionary, newfangled, no huddle defense. And I almost lost my mind over this, by the way. What do you make of all of that? I mean, that's not really how it works, is it?
I think a lot of what it's coming down to now is there is so much offense being called at the line. It's always the game of chess, and it's what you did, now what I do. So obviously if the offense is being called at the line, you got to get yourself in a position where your defense can be called at the line. And eventually they'll go back to some more huddling up from the offense. But it's just the give and take of the way it works. And look, these guys are athletic enough and are so crazy athletically nowadays, they should be able to adapt a lot quicker on the fly. So it's okay. But with the movement and the way everything's done and the rapid pace of the game, maybe the fact that huddling up and having you guys run in and then run, it's wasted motion on them. Because, literally your huddle consists of, it used to be 10, 15 seconds? A defensive huddle now consists of 3, if that. And a lot of times, it started with DBs, guys who were island cornerbacks. Yeah. What am I even bother going to the huddle for? I know what I'm doing. I've got whatever guy is furthest out wide, man to man. So, it's just the evolution, obviously, of the game, and it's the counter action to offense is doing what they're doing. So, yes, it does seem a little weird, but, this is, you watch a game 25 years, the game from then till now, it is almost a dinosaur-looking game. It's just the way it goes.
Yeah, now I understand all of that. I know that with the evolution and the rule changes and what have you, that, offenses, everything's a lot quicker and all of that. But I think my concern is, you're going to have to factor in substitutions, and guys are going to get winded, and it's just a whole. I'm very curious to see how all of that is going to work in practice. In theory, it sounds great, but in practice, I think it's a whole different thing. Calvin Pryor, give us an update on what's going on the defense. Is it going to be as good as it was last year?
Calvin Pryor was interesting. Obviously, known out of college as a big hitter. Not very disciplined in pass coverage. Now, Rex Ryan, obviously a guy who loved him, drafted him. What did he do? He played him to the weaknesses of his game. He wanted him to come in and play a traditional free safety role. It didn't work out very well. Didn't work out well at all. No, and Calvin had problems. And, of course, now playing in New York, the media gets to you. He's not doing what he needs to be doing. No, he was not doing what was not part of his game. And, yes, he was failing at it.
I completely agree. Yeah.
Todd Bowles came in and said, man, I got a guy who within the 10 to 12-yard range is going to light people up. And he did. There were a couple of receivers whose Sundays he ended last year. He showed decent coverage skills in zone, in the red zone. Huge interception in the end zone against Dallas last year, playing his zone. Much more comfortable. Obviously, everybody wants the Dayon Buchanan type where you take a fantastic safety and make him a linebacker. He's not exactly doing that just yet, but he's playing 6-7 yards off the ball, being allowed to basically not have to, backpedal as much, just react to what's in front of him and lay the wood to people. Last year was a phenomenal year for him. I expect nothing but better things from him. Now the defense, obviously the defensive line, Mo Wilkerson's here long-term now. Obviously brought in McClendon after losing Damon Harrison, who might be a little bit more athletic than Harrison. Harrison was a lot stronger. So we're not going to lose as much on the defensive front. Leonard Williams is going to play more inside, a guy drafted just in case Mo wasn't able to stick long-term. Defensive line, ridiculous. David Harris, obviously the team leader on this defense. Everything runs through him. First-round pick, Deron Lee out of Ohio State. Here's the guy that Bowles kind of has picked to maybe be his Buchanan. Obviously, Dayon Buchanan is the guy he put in that spot. Lee, who ran sub 4.5 at the combine, still has some lot to learn playing inside, which is what he's going to be doing here. The secondary, cornerback-wise, second cornerback, Adi Milner, after years and years of just hurt and not doing much when he was playing, they just scrapped it. It was never one of their guys anyway. Buster Screen's going to start outside. He'll go to nickel. When they go to those situations, maybe a little bit of an issue there. The edge rushers, still young, not really established, but can the D-line, who are going to consume so much blocking, make their lives a little easier to get to the quarterback? I think it should work out well. I like this defense. The biggest issue I do have for this Jets team is this is a real difficult schedule. So we're going to see how this unfolds. Playing the NFC West is no cupcake.
Mhm. Yeah, I love Todd Bowles, and it's so funny. I laughed, but and I love Rex Ryan. Don't get me wrong; the entertainment value alone is enough to make me love him. But you mentioned that he didn't. Calvin Pryor is a strong safety. He's not a free safety, and that was just weird. But Rex Ryan did it last year with Mario Williams, and and the Bills defense, and of course now he's brought his brother in, and they've got so much talent. I shudder at the thought of what they're going to do with it.
The issue, honestly, though, I mean, you lose probably their star defensive player, Marcel Darius, for 4 weeks.
Yeah.
Some injuries, other suspensions going on in Buffalo. Yes, Rex Ryan is great, but if he doesn't get your team to the playoffs, the hooting, the hollering, the great one-liners, it's all rubbish. And it was great for the first couple of years. Once this team started to turn downward, and Rex still wanted to shoot his mouth off, it's like it's like enough already. He promised Super Bowls. We got to the playoffs. It didn't work, but now you're still hooting and hollering, and now here we are, a 7-9 team, or drafting 20th in the draft. You can't have it both ways. You got to admit your team isn't what it is.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. How do you feel about the Jets bringing back Antonio Allen?
I actually like it. At the time there were only 3 safeties on the roster. I had a young man on the practice squad who should be a part of things, in due time. Antonio Allen was a good player here, but now again, Antonio Allen played some good strong safety for us. And now Rex got cute. Let's try him a little bit of free safety. Did okay there. Now Rex tried to take it one step cuter. We had cornerback issues. So we took a guy who was a college linebacker that we moved to strong safety, that we asked to play free safety, and we put him at starting cornerback. And then it all fell apart there. Then came back, obviously, for one other camp and injury, and it was over. Antonio Allen was a good Jet when he was playing in the role he was asked for here. I like the fact he's back. Obviously, a little bit humbled after the injury and been traveling around the league a little bit. Knows a lot of the guys here, was happy here, was comfortable here, wants to succeed here. So, I mean, we'll see how much he's still got in the tank, if he's, obviously fully recovered from the Achilles. If he is, I don't think as a, 52nd, 53rd guy on the roster, you can really ask for much more.
Yeah, I agree with that. Oh, I want to ask you about your tight ends, and of course, I get a little bit of a scouting report on Jace Amaro. But I'm looking at the roster, looking at the depth chart at tight end. I'm still surprised that they released Jace Amaro. Give me a report on your tight end position, and why did they decide just to go ahead and move on?
Well, first things first, Chan Gailey doesn't really have much use for a tight end. And that's one thing we noticed throughout last season. And, Jace Amaro obviously, played a big slot position down at Texas Tech, which he excelled in.
Yep.
They're not going to do that here with the Jets. That's the reason they have Brandon Marshalls. That's the reason they have Eric Deckers. That's the reason they have Quincy Enunwas. They got guys big enough to play big slot, but have wide receiver speed. So he was a fit, obviously, once Gailey was brought in here through the Bowles regime. Obviously got hurt last year, missed the entire year. So basically, they didn't know much about him to have much of a feeling about him.
Yep.
The tight ends, when they do use him here, they want to use him in line, which is not Jace Amaro's strength. He's not the best blocker. As you would think at his size, he would be at least a serviceable blocker, which he really isn't. Then we got into games this year after kind of a weak camp. There were some times the alligator arms, not chasing balls, which you don't really want to see from a 6'6", 245-pound guy. And the other thing was he wasn't drafted by this regime, which you saw with D. Milner as well. Whether or not you were a first or second round pick, we're now equating injuries into the factor. We're equating that when we did see you play, we didn't see much. So it just came time to, let's cut bait. Let's go with guys who are going to be here every week and can at least do the minimal roles that we're going to ask them to. And, it was kind of weird because, as Amaro got cut, everyone still, Jets need a tight end, Jets don't think they really need a tight end. What they're asking a tight end to do is basically a third tackle and things of that nature.
It reminds me of what Bruce Arians does in Arizona with his tight ends.
Pretty similar. I mean, we're not going to ask you to run many routes. So when you do, you better succeed. If you don't, I'll just be happy with the guy who can block. And that's basically what it came down to. And honestly, for Jace Amaro, it was probably the best thing for him.
I think I completely agree with that, and we'll talk a little bit later after. I want to get Jeff's thoughts on last night and talk a little bit about the Cam Newton situation and maybe get a couple of week one predictions. But I'm still mad, Jeff. Last night I was livid over what I was watching on my Xbox One, streaming the game via the NBC Sports app. Did you? I know that you watched the game because you were in my timeline. Did you have similar feelings?
Absolutely. I mean, first off, if we're talking college rules applied to the NFL, Brandon Marshall, yeah, you took a knee for the national anthem. You also would have gotten booted from the game. You would have gotten ejected. Also,
hypocrisy at its finest, by the way.
Absolutely. Darian Stewart, the last hit towards the end of the game, you would have been ejected if that was college.
Mm-hmm.
These guys were teeing off on him. And look, the thing I don't understand is, when has the NFL ever gotten to a point where a quarterback league MVP getting calls? I mean, most of the time we're arguing about phantom calls on NFL MVP quarterbacks. And
you breathe on Tom Brady. You breathe on Tom Brady, they're going to throw a flag. You touch Peyton Manning, you're going to get a flag. It's amazing how differently they treat Cam Newton.
Well, I mean, and the other thing is, though, is even if you're pass rushing, you can't even put your hand on the quarterback's helmet without getting a penalty. But now we're talking Von Miller went head-to-head. Now you're talking Marshall went head-to-head. Stewart, they did call it. But the thing about the Stewart call is, are you going to tell me that it's intentional grounding, that the ball didn't reach the line of scrimmage, that cancels out the fact that somebody went head-to-head to a quarterback? That's just mind-boggling. There's no – I mean, you're basically equating jaywalking to manslaughter as a crime in that scenario.
I know. And first of all, I don't think that he had released the ball. And second, who cares? You're ignoring the fact that they were teeing off on his head, and that was a real issue even leading up to that situation. That offsetting penalty thing, I literally almost lost my mind over all that. It was completely and utterly insane. And the Brandon Marshall thing, it's all well and good to support Colin Kaepernick, and I support Colin Kaepernick and what he's doing and all of that. But if you're taking a knee because of oppression and then going out and teeing off on an opposing player and hitting him in the head, you're a big, huge hypocrite.
I mean, it's kind of definitely strange to the fact of, man, we got to stop violence. We have a lot of issues in this country with violence. But, hey, check me out here as I launch myself 5 yards away from someone and go head-to-head. It definitely, I mean, he's definitely going to have a huge fine coming this week. I'm assuming a lot of Denver is going to be. But, look, I mean, taking the knee for the national anthem, whether you agree, you don't agree, that doesn't matter. I think we're all 110% agreement that this country's got some issues. And look, if this can lead to getting some of this resolved and getting this better and saving some civilians' lives and saving some lives of police officers, yes, I'm all for that, 110%. But it is kind of funny, though, that, the stance that Mr. Marshall decided to take and then how he chose to play the game afterwards.
I'm beyond myself. I've kept you too long. Do you want to give me any week one predictions? Are there any other games that you're interested in this weekend?
One of the big ones is I see so many predictions of Patriots to the Super Bowl, which, hey, I know the history that they got going on up there. Obviously, Bill Belichick, hands down, the mastermind of this game. But I just don't know how you can just assume that they're going to go the first 4 weeks with offensive line issues, without Tom Brady, without much to speak of as a running game. Rob Ninkovich, one of the most effective players, is suspended for the first 4 weeks. How everyone just assumes they're just going to roll through this first 4 weeks. Arizona, obviously a huge Super Bowl favorite for a lot of people. I don't see them walking into Arizona and, even winning the game, let alone maybe not losing by more than 10 points. Houston, week 3, ridiculous defensive line, able to play very well. Obviously, one of the best receivers in all of football, and Nuke Hopkins. I don't understand how everyone just makes the assumption that New England can just ease on through and just make it to another Super Bowl. That's one that surprises me. They're a team I'm going to be watching very anxiously, obviously Sunday night and the first couple of weeks. And obviously, so many new faces and new places that you want to see how they're going to succeed. Obviously, Tennessee definitely interested. Obviously, the new backfield down there with Murray and Henry. Is it going to make Mariota's life easier, where he's able to go ahead and work a little more free on his passing game? Are things going to be easier down there? I mean, AFC South on a whole is a division we expect to see some growth from. Jacksonville, obviously things come, taking steps forward. Obviously Tennessee, Andrew Luck back in Indianapolis this year. Houston, brand new quarterback on a big fat contract. Drafted a first-round rookie wide receiver. Definitely, that's a division as well. I want to see week 1 and see how these changes are going to help these teams.
Yeah, great stuff, Jeff. I've kept you way too long, but I do appreciate you joining me this morning. Tell everybody once again where they can find you.
As for now, I'll have some announcements coming soon. Twitter at Jeff _LJ _Lloyd. Always there. Can't wait for Sunday. Obviously, juice is flowing with a little appetizer last night. Really looking forward to it, Sharona.
Yeah, good Jets. Thanks again.
Have a great one, all right?
You too. All right.